All right, is there any changes to the agenda?
Call meeting.
I did, I said call to order.
No, there's no changes from this.
Okay, can I get an approval for the agenda as published?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. And passes unanimously. We're going to do an invocation. We've got the Reverend Joy Glanzer here to do our invocation, after which we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Pray with me. Gracious God, we're gathered here once again to do the work of the people. Lord, we pray you guide our leaders to make their decisions based on compassion, fairness, and balance. You are one God, and in our community there are many faiths. We are so grateful for the diversity. May we look at each other with the same humility and understanding with those who look like us and with those who look different than us, for we're all the same in your eyes, Lord. May our hearts be on fire to grow our community in a direction which supports our families and individuals who call Newberry home. We have found a little piece of heaven here, and we thank you for trusting us with its future. Be with us tonight as we move a little closer to our goals, for in you all things are possible. God bless Newberry. It's in thy precious name we pray. Amen.
Commissioner Clark, would you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, presentations, limited to 15 minutes. We have a presentation from Mike New regarding the field trip to Tallahassee's Cascade Park. Is that a dishwasher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to ask for the commission to give latitude on the 15-minute duration for presentations. I don't think I'll go a minute more than 45. No, we'll keep her to 15 minutes. Mr. Mayor, we took senior staff took a trip to Tallahassee. We try to make one of those trips once a year just for benchmarking purposes. When we see things that other cities are doing that we, to use a technical term, think are really, really cool, and we want to go and learn more about it. So we arranged a trip, got an assistant city manager from Mayo, Florida, to take us around and show us some of their digs. And it's interesting. Well, one, Tallahassee and Gainesville are a tale of two cities. And Tallahassee was recently voted the #1 public utility in the nation. And they win an accolade like that every other year, it seems like. They're always winning some accolade. And the tale of two cities is, well, Gainesville is not winning that award. But they have similar approaches to government. And it just shows that, no matter your ideology, you can run great government and high level of service or not. And so Tallahassee does a great job. Their Cascade Park, which was the field trip that we took, was particularly interesting because of the number of similar projects that you're going to see that they've done that we've at least considered talked about. From renovation of their existing power plant to having an amphitheater and public parks on the same campus. So we'll just kind of buzz through this presentation, show you all the things that they've done, and the ideas that we got from it, and some opportunities that might happen in Newberry. So Cascade Park, this is just the map they built of it. It's a 24-acre park. Has a 2-mile trail, and it's interconnected to the state trail system. So it goes to the south and west all the way to the coast, and it goes to the north and east, eventually to Georgia. I don't think that part of the trail's been completed. Large poster that was printed vertically. Didn't fit very well on my slide, which was horizontally, so I cut it in half and we made it in 2 slide decks. So that's kind of a rendering of the park. Sorry, the typing's a little slow. This park ultimately is a stormwater basin. It's at the bottom of the hill. in downtown Tallahassee. And apparently, Tallahassee was decided, the location was when West Florida and East Florida decided to meet. The Indians took them to a waterfalls, and it's on this campus. So it's the lowest point in town. They've had perennial flooding issues. It's also the site of their former power plant, and it was contaminated with PCB, so it was a Superfund site that needed to be reclaimed. And the story behind how they did all that is terrific, but this is their primary stormwater basin in all of downtown Tallahassee, and the overflow from this makes its way through a creek system back into all the tributaries that end up in the Gulf. So, as I've mentioned, it's a stormwater park first and foremost, and when they have a gully washer, not every amenable is accessible to the general public, let's say. Sometimes it's holding a little bit of water, but it was designed to do that. Now, they have a few more zeros in their budgets than we historically do. So unless we were building a wastewater plant, we're not really sniffing at any $30 million projects. But one of the interesting thing was this project was invented before they ever had a community redevelopment association. And they acquired the property and planned to do it back in the 70s, and it really sat around for 30 years. Couldn't make up their mind, and they didn't have capable people to just move it through. And the guy that took us through the park and was showing us, he kind of championed it starting about 25 years ago. But the thing he said over and over when he was giving us a tour is that we faced opposition. There was opposition every step of the way. And he said it really took a commitment to doing the right thing, to find the resolve to get through it all. And he said in the park, he said most of the opposition was imagined, things, how bad it could be. He said, but once the park was developed, this has become the happening scene in downtown Tallahassee. Everybody loves it. And it's a park with an amphitheater that's built right into residential. And he said when it was first constructed, everybody said, this is going to be terrible. But he said, it hasn't been. He said, we do 2 concerts a month there. They're done by 10 o'clock. There are no noise complaints. So first and foremost, the stormwater park, just a bunch of different views of where the water is. They have nice waterfall features. And in that lower left, you can see the amphitheater there in the background. It had an old power plant, and that's the way it looked back in around the turn of the century, right around 2000. And they were, like us, contemplating is it even salvageable. And they've invested some money. They got some grants. And by the way, we just recently applied for a grant for our historic power plant. And they were able to fix it up, and today it serves as 2 restaurants. It's a really nice restaurant they have that the city still owns, and they lease the operations of the restaurant. Just a couple more photographs of what their renovated electric plant has become. Here's their outdoor amphitheater. It's known as the Adderley, and it looks bigger than it is. It has seating for about 1,000 people, and it's smaller than Lowe's Fort Park, the amphitheater area. I think they said ultimately when the lawn is full, it could hold about 3,500 people. But and they have a couple concerts a month there. They do Friday nights, free music on Friday nights, and you can see one there that's taking a shot from the rear. Just really nice venue. That's the one that abuts residential, and they get quite a few crowds in there, have a nice venue. They have a memorial park that for them, they have several memorial parks in town. So this one is dedicated to the Korean War, and we had a bunch of questions about it because Memorial Park is so on the forefront for Newberry. As it turns out, this was the first thing on the entire site. They had this memorial park there before the city even owned the property and developed the rest around it. But they really did develop this 24-acre park around this Veterans Memorial Park. Really well done park. If you're in the Tallahassee area and you've got a couple, 2 or 3 hours, I highly recommend a visit to Cascade Park and just walk it through. they, like us, they want a splash park. And so they developed one. They've got some lesson learned, and the primary lesson they gave us is see the water that's just spraying up like that, which is easy to maintain and inexpensive. So the kids love that just as much as they love the big, expensive towers that do things, he said, that stay torn up. He said, so if they ever build any more splash parks in Tallahassee, they're going to go with the long key, just spraying water out of the asphalt. But nice park. They built a skate park, and Newberry's been talking about a skate park. Now this one is adjacent to the FAMU campus, and so they put an extra twist on there. There's a primary builder of these parks in Florida. They're based out of Orlando. I think they're called Team Payne, appropriately enough. And so they designed this to have the rattler head like that. It's a long park. It's probably 150 yards long. And try as we might, we could not get Travis to rent a skateboard and give it a go. I don't know if that had anything to do with us being unwilling to giving a helmet. I was trying to put him in that big old 12-foot drop bowl without a helmet, and he would have no part of it. But another feature at their park that Newberryans have talked about wanting in our community. And they have a memorial to an injustice to African Americans, similar to what we've had. It actually was a lynching of African Americans. Very controversial getting this feature included in the park, but the community embraces it. I've noticed the center picture there on the left-hand side is the memorial plaque that they received from EJI, which is the folks out of Alabama that provided us with our plaque. So just the commonalities between Cascade Park and Tallahassee and project ideas that the city of Newberry has contemplated were astounding to me. Lots of ideas on how we can do things more effectively or cost effectively. And I'm available if you have any questions. Again, I encourage you to visit the park the next time you're in Tallahassee. It's definitely worth the 2 hours that you would invest in it. You also have a handout, looks something like that, for your backup.
Does the commission have any questions? Does the public have any questions? Thank you, Mike. Moving on to public announcements. If anybody has a public announcement that they can get done with within 2 minutes, you can do it now. Yeah, he's going to do a public announcement. No, he's not. There's no public announcements. Go to consent agenda. I need approval for a consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. And let's go to the public hearing ordinances, and let's see, Mr. Attorney, could you lead us through the quasi-judicial hearing procedure?
Absolutely. This body is now entering a quasi-judicial procedures. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means we have to follow certain rules and to adhere to a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met. When the judicial board makes a decision, the standard states the following: all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Our first quasi-judicial item for this agenda is item number 4. I'm going to read the ordinance by title only, and then I'll move on to the rest of the procedure. This is ordinance number 2023-18. An ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida relating to the rezoning of approximately 0.9 contiguous acres, more or less, pursuant to a petition by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from Commercial General CG zoning district to the Commercial Central Business District CBD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, tax parcel numbers 02231-000-000, 02232-000-000, and 02233-000-000, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. At this point, if you are speaking on agenda item 4 or agenda item 5, those are our two quasi-judicial matters today, if you will stand so that the clerk may swear you in. Anyone planning on speaking to agenda item 4 or 5?
John Paul Perez.
All right, before we begin, we need to disclose any ex parte communications and disclose whether any member physically inspected the property. Ex parte communications are any conversation or transmission of information that may have a bearing or influence on any voting member's decision. Does anyone have anything to disclose?
None.
All right, hearing none, I'll now briefly explain the order of presentations for item 4 and 5. The presentation order will be staff overview, applicant presentation, staff report and recommendation, third-party intervener, which there are none, public comment, intervener, which there are none. The applicant may then cross-examine, the party interveners may cross-examine, staff may then cross-examine, members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff, applicant, party interveners, and participants. Final arguments may be made by the applicant, party interveners, and the staff related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing and introduced into the record. I will then advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. You'll then have deliberation, and then a vote shall be taken to approve with conditions, continue, or deny the application. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we are ready for the staff overview.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is the rezoning of the Bounds property. This is second reading, so I'm going to give a very brief presentation as we've been over this once with you and once with the Planning and Zoning Board already. This map just shows a general location of the property within the city limits. Here's an aerial of the property, just showing the built environment around it and its location on Newberry Road. The request is to rezone from Commercial General to Commercial Central Business District, which is appropriate for the downtown area. At this time, I'm going to ask if the applicant has anything they'd like to add to the presentation, which they do not, so I'm going to continue. And with that, I'm just going to conclude that our findings have not changed. We still find it consistent with the comp plan and land development regulations, and we are still recommending enactment on second reading. Not what it says on the screen.
All right, if there is any public comment at this time. All right, hearing none, are there any cross-examinations? Any cross-examination from the applicant? All right, any questions that the board has, the commission has?
Questions?
Okay, final arguments?
I just want to conclude that right now we're approving zoning change. That's it. No development. This will come back before you as you sit on the dais as the Board of Adjustment for site plan approval. At this time, we haven't received the site plan application, but as soon as it does come in and completes review, we'll have it back before you so you can see what this will look like. So that's all.
All right, as you all know, the standard in this quasi-judicial proceeding is competent substantial evidence, whether you approve with conditions, continue, or deny. And we're now ready for deliberation.
Anybody have anything?
No.
We have nothing from the commission. Anything from the public? I need a motion from the commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passed unanimously. to number 5, the replat of Lot 1 of the Bartley Lane subdivision.
This is resolution number 2023-32, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving the appropriate conditions and safeguards, the replat of Bartley Lane, Lot 1, parcel number 02386-010-001, as authorized under Section 5.18 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations in a planned residential development PRD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Again, John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development. This is a replat of Lot 1 of Bartley Lane. The commission has previously seen a replat of Lot 10 for a very similar reason. The construction of the site was not consistent with the setbacks and whatnot. On the screen is a general location of the property within the city limits. The applicant is Sylvester Brown and James Shepard, same as last time. This image shows an aerial of the property. Within the Bartley Lane subdivision, the dashed line being the limits of the subdivision, the lime green being the limits of the property. And again, we're just, what the commission is considering tonight is just approving the replat of the property, that's all. So this is an image of the original plat. The light blue is the limits of the property. The little bit darker blue is the setback, and that setback is drawn on the face of the plat. This is the plan that is in the building permit, which is not consistent with the setback shown on the face of the plat. So in order to cure this issue, they need to replat the setback lines. And here's an overlay of the house with the original platted setback lines. You can see there's encroachment there. Now you'll notice that the new setback line is matching what was built on the property. The plan or the building footprint for the home that's in the building permit is not consistent with what I'm seeing for the plat, but it is what's built out on the site. And this would resolve the matter and give effectively the builder a clean title so they can go ahead and sell the property to a new family. And the applicant's not here to give a presentation, but based on standing recommendations from staff previously on this matter, we are recommending that the commission approve this. There are some outstanding comments on the replat that are clerical in nature that we'll be resolving, so there's just one condition attached to the resolution that they resolve the outstanding comments prior to recordation of the plat.
After this, it's clear.
Yes. That completes my presentation. Applicant's not here. Do you have any questions for me? Yes.
Let's have public comment briefly first.
Okay, sorry.
Anyone from the public have anything to say on this agenda item? All right.
I'm back.
If the commission has any questions.
Do you have any questions?
John Paul, I was trying to look at the map and I did not hear what you were saying about what the difference between the overlay with the orange and the red was.
This one?
Yes, that one and the next one.
So the
This is the foundation?
yeah, the building footprint, or yeah, the extent of the foundation,
Okay.
where they put their foundation footer boards.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was the red, the next one?
This is what actually got built, or at
This
least
is what?
this is what was built. So the drawing that I have, the site plan I have, and the building permit does not match up with what was built, which is not really contextually not the issue. Contextually, the issue is the encroachment into the setback,
Right.
the platted setback. And so the request doesn't change much, but you can see from the drawing or the footprint of the home and the revised setback lines, it's a little bit different. Yeah, and there may have been some changes in the field that didn't make its way into the folder. All of this came up during construction, and so there may have
That
been
was
some
gonna
changes.
be my next question. How we got a house built.
Yeah, so, we didn't require a form board survey, so that's something that we're doing routinely for cases where it's warranted. So we'd be able to confirm the location of any foundation before it gets poured.
Okay. And this, I'm reading this correctly, is basically is the cul-de-sac in the front and Fourth Avenue in the back?
Yes.
There's not houses either, on either side, right?
There's only a house on the west side, and stormwater on the east.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So this, I mean, they didn't supply a survey before they started building? Is a survey not required?
Surveys typically required. With some builders, we are a little bit more lenient. In this particular case, we were a little bit more lenient and didn't have a survey or a proper site plan. This is usually a typical result of not having, a survey or a proper site plan.
So their property was, they were given more property because it encroached into the setback. Were they charged for that property? They took from the city of Newberry?
No, so there's no actual encroachment into the right-of-way. This is all their property. So let me
Oh, okay.
show, yeah. So this image shows the original plat,
Yeah.
and the light blue on the outside is the limit of the property. And that boundary doesn't change.
Okay, so they're just,
It's a
It just
arbitrary line drawn on the face of the plat that shows the setback that they're changing.
so the setback basically went from what, 15 feet to?
It's about
Yeah.
7 feet in the
Yeah,
front now.
okay.
Yeah.
I wonder, this must have been a home builder or something, because if you had, you know what I'm saying? Because if you had a mortgage company,
Yeah.
they would want a foundation survey done.
Mhm.
So it's probably owner builder, and let's add that. That's probably all they did.
They got us in the drive-through.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right.
It's resolved, I mean, it's not gonna be an issue.
This will take care of title issues for the builder. They'll be able to go ahead and sell the property. And the issue of encroachment in the setbacks or platted setbacks, or this issue generally, we are addressing currently by requiring form boards at the building permit phase and prior to pouring of that slab. So this is just kind of a holdover. This is from a few months ago. It's just making its way now, so.
No problem with it.
All right.
If there are no other questions from the commission, any final argument?
None, I waive.
All right,
We need a,
the competent substantial evidence still applies, same as the last one, and you can now deliberate.
can I have a motion? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. It passed unanimously. On to the next. Item number 6 is solid waste collection services agreement. I think City Manager New will do another presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go Tim.
Pro Tem. Solid waste collection service. You know, it's been about 6 years since we had a conversation about solid waste collection services. Time flies when you're having fun. So, 6 years ago, the City Commission approved us moving into a new contractual phase with Waste Pro. They were the low bidder in a competitive solicited bid process. And if I recall correctly, that was very much a money saver for our solid waste residents. We entered into a contract that would provide 2 times a week service, and I think we're about the only community in the area that still does twice a week service. Most have reduced to once a week. Get a little bit of cost savings there, but reduces the wear and tear on your vehicles, on your roads and things like that. But we're the most competitive, or have been the most competitive on rates for the last 6 years. The agreement that we have calls for a 7-year initial term. At the end of the 6th year, there's a 90-day negotiating period to see if we want to do a 5-year extension. The contract allows for 2 5-year extensions before we're required to rebid the service. The commission has the right and the authority to ask us to go to bid at the end of the original contract, but that would happen after the 90-day negotiating period. So we've had 2 amendments to our contract. The first amendment, the city commission will hopefully forgive the city manager for not being able to spell eliminated properly. But you eliminated the annual performance bond requirement for the vendor, something they were required to pay every year, and they came and made a case that the commission was satisfied with, and we eliminated that requirement. That, to me, showed a really strong spirit of cooperation from this board. And then part of our fee, or part of our monthly charge, comes from tipping fees that the county charges to the vendor out of the vendor's control. And the county, for the first time in several years, increased tipping fees, and it was within the vendor's right to ask for a fee increase, and we calculated what it would be. It was 40 cents a month for our residential customers, a little bit more for our commercial customers, but we made that fee adjustment, and we've spoken to the county. They're not going to do that again this year. There's no fee increase coming for this particular year. So as I'd mentioned, we're in a 7-year contract that began in 2017, terminates next June. And we have a 90-day negotiation period, if the commission wishes, for us to see if we could do a 5-year extension. If we do this extension, we would get one more 5-year extension. That would give us a total of 7, 5, and 5, 17-year contract total when we do that. So staff's recommendation is to authorize us to negotiate a 5-year contract extension with Waste Pro for solid waste services and bring back the proposed extension for consideration within 75 days for the city commission's consideration. Would tell you that'll put us in September. We'll have that back before you. If for some reason we don't decide to move forward with that, that will afford us 9 months to bid the service back out, get a new contractor in place, which is ample time as long as we move along expeditiously. So, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions if the commission has any.
Any questions for the city manager?
Anybody here representing Waste Pro?
Mr. Mayor, let me scan the audience. Yeah, Ashley Dana is here.
I have a question for you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
With our upcoming budget, will this impact our budget in any way if we don't have a negotiated contract prior to the agreement?
Yes, it will, but because all of our charges are passed along to our residents, if the fee goes up, it'll show up on the expense budget. But when we come before you with a budget amendment, we'll amend the expense budget and we'll amend the revenue budget correspondingly. So essentially, it won't change our budget outcome. It'll just change some of the numbers in our budget.
Thank you.
I wish Dallas was here to have heard that answer.
Any comments from the public?
Are you going to speak?
Since they're all staring at me.
Earn your money.
We're waiting patiently.
I know, let me switch hats. So for the record, my name is Dana Miller. I represent Waste Pro of Florida. Thank you, Commission, for considering this. I don't know that I really have anything to add. City Manager New summed it up We definitely want to bring our best to the table, as we have always done. We are a proud partner of the city of Newberry. And not only that, but we feel like it's been a mutual partnership. We had a great meeting with staff within the last few weeks, well, last month. And I think that we will be able to come back with a successful agreement to y'all. The intention is to be able to renew, obviously, and to continue our relationship with the city. And I'm also available for any questions.
We just need to authorize the city.
Congratulations to you and Monty.
Not this Monty, but
No, not
yes,
this one.
yes.
Yeah.
Did I get drunk again? What happened?
No, this is a personal
You're a lot prettier than
Facebook.
you,
Oh,
man.
yeah?
Yes. And I do believe there's a birthday that needs to be acknowledged. Happy birthday, Commissioner.
Yay.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Any further questions? Do we just need a, thank you, ma'am. Do we just need a head nod from the commission manager? Or do we need a motion?
Recommended motion.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Have a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Passes unanimous.
Passes unanimously, and going on to the next topic, which is again presented by City Manager New.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Every year we meet with the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners to discuss projects that are relevant and germane to both parties. We've scheduled this year's meeting for July the 10th, I believe. It's going to be at Easton. And each year before that meeting, we get recommendations, suggestions from our city commission on topics for the agenda. I'm going to surprise you. Normally being brief is not my forte. Normally I'll throw 25 projects up there and we'll then discuss them into the wee hours of 2 mornings later. Before the mayor left for DC, he and I sat down and he made his recommendation, which I've included, to have a joint meeting. I said it there, it says at Newberry City Hall. Apparently the fact checkers are not doing such a good job because we're meeting at Easton. So when we get that on your calendars, we'll make that correction. No excuses. I need to do better. And my evaluation happens in October. I'll self-report these deficiencies. But I've identified 3 items for discussion. One which I think will take up the majority of the night, is the Newberry Environmental Park, to include the proposed Alachua County meat processing facility, a rural collection center, and a small, I have no idea what that next word is. I'm really struggling tonight. Supposed to say quantity, hazardous materials collection center, and a fire training facility. So those are 3 projects that we're working on with Alachua County, with Essences. We're donating dirt and they're donating facilities. We'll also discuss County Road 337 improvements with that agenda item. And then the second agenda item would just be an update on some of our initiatives that would have relevance to Alachua County. And agenda item number 3 would be the county doing a similar. That's where we pat each other on the back and say what a great job the other entity is doing. So, Mr. Mayor, the recommended action is to discuss these items and identify those that you would like to include on an agenda. I'll pass that along to county manager and we'll get an agenda finalized and distributed prior to our meeting. If you'd like, I'll go ahead and back up to item number 1, the Newberry Environmental Park. Mr. Mayor, I'm available for questions if you have any.
Does the commission have any comments, anything in particular they prefer, or something that's not mentioned up there that they would like to bring forth? Apparently what we have there is good enough.
Mr.,
Yeah, I'm sure.
and identify,
We might
okay.
be only getting one.
We will keep our presentation to about 30 minutes, and I'll ask the county to do the same on the projects updates. I'm sure on their side, they're going to need to talk about pavement management program, what they're going to do with their infrastructure tax, and they'll probably want to announce that they've done that they're proposed to do a sharing of their revenues. They're taking, I think it's $330 annually out of it's $330,000 out of their share of the tax to go towards a joint project. Essentially, we pick a project that we think would have meaning to the county, and they've done that historically in the past. It's how we divide up the money. That has changed. This year, they gave each of the cities the same amount of money. In the past, Gainesville has gotten about $600,000, and the smaller cities get a little bit less. So they changed it up a little bit. We'll get that both with Wild Spaces funding and with the infrastructure tax funding.
I do that one thing.
I do too.
No, Chief Trigger.
Clark?
The Champions Park, don't we need to dig into that pretty heavy and get this thing, to the top about would this be a time to do it with this county?
It-
For our replacing the services and the things that they need to be giving money to, so that Newberry ain't fronting the bill, I mean, ain't our bill, but is this gonna be the time?
Actually, I think it would be a fantastic time to bring it up. I would say though, that normally at this meeting, it is get some ideas out there and direct staff, less than trying to hammer out an agreement. Our contract with Alachua County says that they will fund the capital improvements that were made out there to the tune of $8 million, and that we'll maintain them. So when those facilities are wearing down, the county is right to expect Newberry to maintain that park. Now, I think we have a very good position to make. Our agreement with them terminates in 2025. We will have served it out, and at that point, whatever the commission wants to do with that park is to the commission's, it's the commission's entire decision. The county doesn't weigh in. I believe that at the end of that period of time, though, that we'll have an opportunity to negotiate with the county and see if we can't come up with a partnership to fund. The developer out there has indicated a willingness to invest some money. I think that the county is willing to invest the money. It continues to be a huge draw. I think last weekend,
Yeah,
we
it was
had
huge.
150 teams.
There's a couple of things that just need to be addressed, I'll get offline. Mike, on
Absolutely,
that.
happy to do it. It's a
And
great
let's see
idea.
what- Straight, maybe we
Yes.
can get some things.
So, and we're gonna touch on that part. Part of my objective on the Champions Park is to give them about a 10-year, here's what Champions Park has done for Alachua County, in terms of bringing heads and beds over the last 10 years, and beat that in so that in 2025, when we say we think that park needs some funding from the tourist tax, that they say, yeah, that thing's been a real boon for us, and we're happy to be a funding partner to upgrade the park again.
Yes,
That's all I got.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, Mike, can you change this to County Road 337, 235, make it 337, 235, and 170th?
Make sure, yes, sir.
But, is that asking for a lot in one sitting?
I will make sure, I think when they cover their pavement, management plan, that they're gonna come focused on the roads in Newberry. I don't think we'll be talking about county roads in Waldo or Hawthorne, that they're gonna know for every county maintained road in Newberry, they're gonna pull it off that 11-page report. And by the way, I have an 11-page report that has 500 projects on there. Ours are in the mix down there. We'll go through, highlight them all, and send them out to you prior to this meeting, so you'll know when they anticipate working on each of the roads. It's 170th, 235, 337, County Road 232 out north of town, and any other county, 170th going south to Archer.
Right.
That's funded for next year. They're planning to start that work next year.
Okay,
But happy to do that, it's a good idea.
all right.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I think you have our approval to go forward, Mike.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you can tell it's summertime and staff has vacation. So they told me if it was meant to be, it would be up to me. And so we're getting a lot of my agenda items out of the way for the summer. The renovation of Newberry's old electric generating plant. Mr. Mayor, we discussed this with the the city commission. Last time we talked about it was 2 years ago, and we submitted a grant application last week or the week before to the U.S. Department of the State, and it reminded me that, you know what, we're working hard on projects, but if we don't get out and give the commission an update, they may not be aware. So I was gonna just give you guys a 10-minute presentation on what's going on with the old power plant. Out there's a couple photographs of the generator, what the plant looked like once long ago. And you know, that old water tank has been taken down, but I understand there's a builder in town that specializes in water towers. And he knows all of the streamlined ways to get there without a building permit. So I was planning on having a conversation with him about seeing if we couldn't get a replica built back on this site. And I appreciate that he has a good sense of humor. So you guys are very familiar with the facility location on Northwest 260th Street, and it's soon to be fronting State Highway, State Road 26 westbound. We hired an architect to come through, help us with some renderings of what we could do with it, and his main focus was turning it into more of a museum or a historic showpiece. So I don't want the county commission to think that we're locked in on one thing. What we're really locked in on is restoring the building and making it public accessible. Right now, as you guys know, it's a glorified storage facility, but we have in the last 2 years made quite a bit of headway in cleaning it out. We put a new roof on it recently, and so we think we've got it protected from the elements, and we could turn it into a meeting place, we could turn it into a museum, or we could make it leasable to someone to open a restaurant, tap room, any type of public facing facility.
Police station?
What's that?
Police station?
Police station, yes. It is sitting on the campus that is the lead candidate for a police station. A little small, but we could convert the jail cells that are just behind it into holding cells for the police department.
Really.
So here is the floor plan. The old generator, the original generator from 1913 still sits there, and there are several in Newberry that claim that they could make it run. We haven't attempted that, but it would probably be a fun project to give it a whirl. And it's also where the original water plant was, so that room there to the top of the screen is a big wet well where water was stored until it was pumped out into the system. I think that it's interesting to know that the volume of water that would hold right now would last all of about 5 minutes in Newberry today, but it probably was a day's worth of storage back in the day that it was constructed. That's the general floor plan. So one of the real deficiencies for making it a public building is it doesn't have restroom facilities, and those are going to have to be added if it's made a public building. Unless Commissioner Farnsworth is correct in saying, well, there's restrooms across the street at Lowe's Ford Park, we can just walk across there. Just funny. Some section views of what what our architect envisioned as possible with the site. More section views. Kind of an exterior view of the front of the building, looking west. More looking west. There's the wet well. That wet well's got a guardrail around it, but it's 25 feet deep and would be quite the little fall, and he had the idea of putting something clear that you could see through, but you could walk out and see everything under it structurally capable of withstanding foot traffic loading. So, you know, that's his take on what we could do with the facility. More, there's a really poor attempt at what a generator would look like, but that's the old generator. Meeting room, there's an extra room in there, and we thought it might make a conference room or rentable space for the community that wanted to come in and hold meetings. And opinion of cost, this was 2 years old, but we thought it would cost about $715,000. When we submitted our grant application, we had a number of vendors, contractor vendors participate with us to develop a separate cost estimate, and it rolled in right at $700,000. I thought that was interesting. And just a note there at the bottom that we recently completed a re-roof at a cost of a little over $30,000. Next steps, we have not moved into design. So these were the next steps back then, and the commission has asked us not to move into design, but we did submit a grant application to the Department of the State. It requires a match. It requires a 50-50 match, so it's almost a $700,000 ask. So the city would need to come up with $350,000. There's definitely an off-ramp if they say, hey, we've selected you. And the commission says, well, you know, we were just kidding, we're not willing to move forward on it, then we'll just tell them thank you, but no thank you. But if we do decide to move forward on it, we still have a little over $200,000 in ARPA funds that are not allocated. And I think at the end of the day, getting $500,000 on a $700,000 project donated from other sources to get this generating plant back into good shape, good condition where the public can enjoy the benefit of it would be a good project for the city. There's a point for questions, if you have any, and then there's just a few more slides, so I can keep.
Any questions for the commission?
Just see you're gonna go on, maybe you'll answer the question next, Mike, about the.
Yes, that comes up in here. So I mentioned there's grant funding opportunities, and we have turned in a grant application, and we have some level of confidence that we're going to see some success with that. Here's the grant total, almost $700,000. Here's a list of 9 items that we've identified in the grant, and they're requiring a 50-50 match. So we need to get water and sewer to the building. We need to replace the doors and the windows, add bathrooms, point up some masonry work, rewire it, and get ADA compliant sidewalks and parking, you know, all the things in our LDRs. And that's what we've proposed with our grant application. And you'll recall some time ago that we'd got a kind of a proposal to put a microbrewery in there. Since then, there's been 2 other parties that are interested in microbrewery and or tap room. We're working on an RFP. We wanted to get the roof finished and make sure it was dry and safe before, well protected before we did any of that, but we're trying to get this RFP out by the end of the summer, and if there are some business ideas that are of interest to the commission, that'll come back with a long-term lease where so the city maintains control of the property. Never has to worry about losing ownership of the property, but we'd have a business partner in there operating it for us. We would cut off about 0.6 acres of the site to give them control of that, and then the rest of the facility would currently remain our public works compound and water plant, and eventually would become the city's police department. And in our CIP this year, Jamie has found that the well that's on site is reaching the end of its useful life. And so we'll probably show up in your CIP that eventually this water plant is proposed to be moved out to Easton with our newer facilities. Some of the lease conditions that staff had thought about in terms of what a lease might look like, and I'd mentioned that we may have borrowed some of these ideas from the city of Tallahassee. who've done something very similar. It's kind of what a site plan would look like from a brewery. More renderings. Estimated cost, this is the street improvements that Commissioner Clark asked about. We have under contract with an engineering firm to develop some renderings of what 260th would look like if we made improvements between Northwest First Avenue and Northwest Third Avenue. It's not a long run of road. It's 400 or 500 feet. And so we've talked about putting, angle parking and sidewalks on both sides, a little bit of landscaping, get the travel lanes improved, and potentially an area for food trucks to park in case, with Lois Fort Park there, and with this eventually becoming something that's public facing, it might be something that would be a downtown gathering point. Estimated cost for that street improvements is $300,000 for construction, 10% for design, 10% more for design. And that's a profile of a section view of the same road improvement was being proposed. And Mr. Mayor, that officially concludes the presentation. There are no more slides.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Clark.
Mike, when we did this a year or two ago, talking about the power plant, all back when there was somebody proposed to do a tap house.
We are not aware of anything in our research. It hasn't shown that. What we've found is that I think that as best I recall, that was their angle, but that we were able to satisfy that wasn't a requirement. The commission can do that if they choose to. But
Something with that brewery the last time.
agree. I recall the conversation, but I felt like we resolved that and that all parties were satisfied that we wouldn't have to convey the property if we didn't want to.
Any other questions from the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pro Tem. So if it gets traction for the brewery angle and they want to add this production stuff, we would just need to adjust the fencing and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Right? Would we anticipate taking ownership of all of that also? So they would, that seemed like a pretty big
No, sir.
investment.
I wouldn't anticipate that, and I think if someone were gonna build facilities on site, they would be definitely looking for the longer end of the lease.
Right.
But, it's anything permanently attached to the ground, so, they likely would be, putting in a building that they wouldn't expect to take with them. But I would imagine that to be a production building, probably a metal building. But all of the brewery equipment on the inside, if their lease ended and they didn't renew it and they were moving on, I would expect them to unbolt it, put it on a truck and haul it to the next site.
Is there also an opportunity, is there enough footprint out there to do stuff outside? For them to do anything outside?
Yes, sir. They're correct. There's facility, there's enough land kind of on the west side of the building, which is behind the building, for them to put in a manufacturing building, kind of where the jail cells are now.
I'm sorry, like outdoor seating?
There's still ample, not tons, but there's definitely ample room for them to have an outdoor seating area.
Okay, my other question was whether or not, I don't remember if we talked about, does FMEA or FMPA have any sort of companion foundation that would be interested in partnering with us on something like this to restore it for
We have
the good
made
of the
that
industry,
ask
something or other?
on a couple of occasions. The best we've come up with is the manufacturer of the generator has never said no. They've said, we'll think about it, give us more information. But so I think they continue to be in play. The idea is that they would fund it. We would put a nice plaque on there speaking about, these old generating facilities and who they were manufactured by, in the building and that it would stay there permanently in exchange for their funding.
Expensive plaque.
Expensive plaque, exactly.
Okay,
And we'll spend $5 on that plaque.
that's all I have. It's been 20.
Any other questions? Questions from the public or comments?
Hello. First, I just want to say I'm so excited that you're moving forward on this plant, because it's been a dream for so many years. And since I had my question, manager answered most of it. I was hoping you, provide it to the public sector to see if they can put the money in. I mean, grants are great, but I think there's a lot of interest in doing a tap room, a restaurant, something like that. So I think that would be a great way to utilize the space. And I'm glad to see the RFPs going out later this summer, because I know there's a few people that are excited about, putting in proposals. So I just wanted to put my support in for it. Thank you.
Ma'am,
Come up with some interesting names.
any other comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, what do you need from us, Mayor, or Manager New?
Mostly I need some support with the water tower builder guy to see about getting a water tower donated to the site. And then after that, is receive presentation. We'll keep you posted on the grant. We'll keep you next budget cycle. We'll let you know if we got any funding programmed in there. I think the next thing for us to really focus on is doors and windows. And at that point, it really is a turn it over to any vendor that might be in there for a lease to do the interior renovations. We'll do whatever the historian tells us we can do. Normally, the stuff we do, I find out you shouldn't have done that. I get that. So we'll get a historian in there first instead of like we normally do, which is after we've done the damage.
Commissioner Martin has another question.
Absolutely.
More of a thought bubble than anything. If we actually maybe solicited public entertainment of doing something with this, maybe their proposals would reflect how much they could actually put into it on their own, and maybe offset some of our own expenses. If they wanted to do it a particular way, maybe they would be willing to do more to it, and we wouldn't have to.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And that's part of the RFP process is we want to be pretty broad with this. Give us your ideas of what you would do. But I think the grant application being what it is, I think is it could be that the commission says, we got the grant, we've secured the grant, but it requires a match, and the vendor that wants the building, it's up to them to provide the match, or we have no appetite for a match. The commission could make that decision as well. But we'll try to keep all these things teed up and aligned pretty closely, so that we can ask that question of potential candidates is, hey, we've got a $395,000 or $345,000 grant teed up, but it requires a $345,000 match. Is that something that would interest you or not? It's a really good idea.
The Twin Pairs is gonna make it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd also add then, if they're willing to make that sort of investment, I wouldn't have as much appetite necessarily to try to be making money off of it from a leasing standpoint. But it's kind of my opinion on it. If we're sinking a bunch of money into it, then that'd be a little bit different.
And I think, I agree with you. I think I've only envisioned a no-cost lease, but probably they pay the taxes. Something like this, because it's a private enterprise, would be taxable. I think that would be their lease payment, and to keep it open to the public, take care of the building. But the commission gets to set no fee lease, or we want to try to recoup some of our investment through the lease as well.
They're gonna have the $350,000 note most likely.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
You're-
Any more questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we will move on to city manager comments.
Perfect timing. City manager comments.
If you can't get here on time, get here when you can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments. One, happy birthday to Commissioner Martin. I didn't know, but happy birthday to you. 51. Holy crap. Mr. Mayor, also am traveling to DC tomorrow. We're meeting with members of the Senate and the House Ag Committee. They are working on the 2023 Farm Bill, and we are trying to get them to include funding for regional tech hubs, that we would be applicant number one. They don't do earmarks, so getting direct funding for Newberry is not a question or not an option for us. But if they fund these regional tech hubs and there's interest in it, we are responding to an invitation to the chair of the House Ag Committee, and Representative Kamick is really the driving force behind all this. But the chair is very interested in our Ag Tech Park, wanted to learn more about it. We've scheduled this trip. We also have meetings with the Senate side of the Ag Committee. So we are hoping that it gives us an opportunity to apply. I think our ask is $500 million go to regional tech hubs, and that we would bring some portion of that to Newberry to get our Ag Tech Innovation Park off the ground. And then finally have traveling the following week. We're working with a manufacturer to bring about a 250,300 square foot facility to Newberry, Florida. They have one down in Plant City, and we're going to be touring that facility and learn more about what they do. And then we'll be trying to find a location for them in Newberry and get them settled in here. Something looks like it could happen within the next year and a half. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Start, City Attorney, do you have anything to say?
Nothing for me.
Think about how well I've conducted the meeting or anything?
Mr. Mayor, I need to, no, I'm kidding.
City Clerk?
Judy, is this our last year, their last year for Form 1s? Or is this their first year of Form 1s? Because the law changed, and now they have the long form to do. Okay, so. Sure. Okay, so this is your last year of the short work. The real work begins next year. Thank you to the Florida Legislature.
Wow. Commissioner Maison, do you have anything, sir?
Oh, no. Sorry for my tardiness, but I did want to mention that, and I'm sure everyone in this room have heard downtown Main Street Sweets and Treats, all the goodness that's come out of that place, from their breakfast to their lunch to their desserts. I don't know if you've been there yet, but if you haven't, and if you're watching, if you haven't, you need to go downtown and pick a treat or a sweet. It's well worth it, trust me.
My grandkids are killing me. We all know all about it.
Commissioner Barden?
I have nothing.
Commissioner Clark?
All I can say is God bless America and our troops that are deployed, and seriously, and thanks for everything we've done here. That's all I got.
Commissioner Coleman?
This is all I got. I got one quote that my mom would always say. So, seeing that I'm still in, I guess you call it morning stage, she always used to say, don't fear sadness, as it tends to sit right next to love. So, and that's all I got.
Thanks, sir. I have nothing. Do we have any citizens' comments limited to 5 minutes? I have scanned the room. I have seen no citizens' comments. We are adjourned.
Buddy, happened again. That was quick. south. This would be a project that would reconstruct at least a portion. To add some permanent outdoor. You got some suites over. The street, it would be open to the public. It wouldn't be just for the restaurant. An idea.
While you're here, though, that's what I was gonna ask, is this a restaurant thing, or is this give this to the restaurant a long time ago to do outdoor seating? There was barriers around it and all kind of stuff.
We experimented.
So are we taking it back, or did we ever give it
We
away?
never gave it to them.
We never gave it.
It's just part
It
of
remained part of the
easement?
city's
We
right.
just
They were currently unpaved. Prior to that, though, prior to obtaining funding.
We also have some that are on sewer. It's just 4-inch lateral after 4-inch lateral connected instead of main line, 8-inch pipe and manhole. This is an upgrade for a previously installed, not quite up to standard system.
To Fifth Avenue or just Fifth Avenue. Available. And then similar for improvements. Area. Town ladder street improvements. Ladder streets for us. Um, Not which ones you don't approve of.
Go ahead.
Okay, Brian, so with the CRA money, I know these are great projects. I know some of these are probably. Question is, are we gonna allocate the money to the downtown with odds and getting our buildings done and hopefully, honestly, I mean, I've said it before, when you go down there going to sweet treats, the plants in the top of these buildings are things that I really do think we should concentrate on. Lucas, you know, I thought all this was solid brick. There's a lot of this stuff that ain't nothing more than, well, just the little thin brick layers over.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of brick, but not a,
Most of
Most of it's brick.
Bar building on the south side
Exactly.
and on the north side, right before the
Right.
railroad tracks, yes, sir, is actually.
but a lot of stuff's coming apart. I know we got some new businesses. Looks like there's some kind of new bar. I ain't even heard what this thing is. It looks cool, whatever it is. And, for those business people to get some of this money, think on this particular brief.
Come back with some ideas for enhanced, sort of an enhanced facade program. Might like that.
Yeah.
So Brian, are you wanting the commission to bring forward a priority list? Or how you want to deal with this?
If possible, for and just kind of let us know.
I mean, personally, I think number 5 would be one of the more important ones where people can get adequate water and wastewater facilities for that area, and that's 75 residents, so I think that would be my priority unless somebody can convince me differently. Anybody else have anything? Commissioner Martin?
Brian, do we have any feedback from the residents, particularly on, I guess, number 6 and 7? From the residents of whether or not they're interested in even having street lighting improvements over there? I'm just,
Even turned on? Mr. Chair, we have not done any kind of surveys or public or participation other than the board meetings.
okay.
And so we don't have any input from the local citizens, whether they would like additional street lighting or.
Okay. I mean, I think it would probably be prudent to try to engage them somehow. We could probably put in a community open house together to pitch some of these things and listen to the feedback from them also before we kind of prioritize. I appreciate the staff kind of looking around at the bigger picture and spreading this out. I mean, you covered pretty much almost all the 4 corners of the whole area, so I think that's definitely appreciated. So, yeah, I think that's my feedback.
I have a
Commissioner
question.
Maison?
Yeah. So I noticed on number 6, it mentioned, no, I'm sorry, number 5, off of 255th Street, 6th Ave Northwest, where it said water and wastewater services. Now, will that help improve the pressure? Or is that just, okay, so then my next question is this. I had someone complain, number 7, which is the area that Tim was bringing up with the lighting area. They were complaining about the pressure. Wastewater pressure. Is there any way? Well, no, I'm sorry. Waste pressure. The pressure. Work was done off of 3rd Ave, and now there's problem with pressure.
That's the kind of stuff that they need to report it. I mean, I can write it down, but they call, I mean, it could be a closed valve, it could be a number of things, and with no disrespect to elected officials, but if they tell you and they don't tell us, then they're just probably gonna have low water pressure next week.
Now, I didn't know if it was like how
If you
over
can-
here you determined that it was.
Can you get,
Jamie Jones.
can you get me some,
He's 2 weeks out.
if you get me a street address or a street, I'll get Rance looking at that first thing in the morning.
Is that all,
Or the
Commissioner Mason?
app, we have that app too, See Click Fix, Newberry Connect.
Commissioner Coleman?
This downtown, sidewalk and street lighting improvement, I think that's imperative. It really is. I mean, when we had the Christmas thing this last time, we gotta do something about that. And we have more than just the Christmas, so I like seeing that number one. So, that's all I had.
I'll get with you, Brian.
There's no immediate rush, but staff would like to get back with the commission, or the board, in fairly short order, and after you've had time to look these over, and maybe you can work out our priority list, and then we can get started.
Mr. Chair, I would just offer by way of observation, I believe that the best way to go with our CRA budget is to establish a percentage of annual revenues, because annual revenues are gonna change, hopefully grow quite a bit, that would be contributed to capital projects, and a percentage that's gonna be contributed to programming, such as what Mark was speaking of initially, like our facade grants, landscaping grants, those types of programs, and then, you know, the administrative costs. There's a certain amount of administrative costs that come with the thing every year. And then when we're building a budget, we'll say that, you know, we had 300,000 in revenue this year, and the commission said that we should do 30 to 40,000 in administrative costs, another 100,000 in programming, and the balance in capital projects. We'll try to build a budget that represents that type of funding trifecta. And then when we start to make the ranking, you'll be able to see that these projects would get included with this funding, and these projects wouldn't make the cut.
I think if we,
Commissioner Martin?
Can we try to put some dollar figures with these also?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Brian, in regards to Commissioner Coleman's comment, when the state comes in and redoes the road, I mean, are they gonna add any extra lighting, or are we?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is they are gonna do streetscaping, which will include new lighting, but this would be the side streets that protrude
Okay.
off of that, where they're not doing the improvements. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It does put the commission at a disadvantage that the state is planning to improve the two main corridors through town, and that it's 7 years out, 6 years out. That makes it much more of a challenge for us, because that's where you'd initially think, well, let's spend our money there, and, well, are you gonna do what Commissioner Farnsworth was suggesting, and throw good money after bad? So it kind of forces us to look at other places and how it will all blend together when DOT does its project through town.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have the side streets lighted and all, but I hate to get the cart ahead of the horse on this one.
Agree.
Any other comments, gentlemen? Any comments from the public?
Do you think people down there?
I would like street lighting. Everybody loves,
we got solar power lamps from that place on
You
TV,
have-
we're gonna buy everybody one.
people running up into
I want one on my phone.
your house and steal stuff, you'd like to have street lights.
Mr. Chair, we'll put some dollar estimates to these, and then that'll give you time to look at the list, and then we'll come back with some dollar estimates, and that'll add to the information for you to make your final priority list.
Thank you, sir. Comments, Executive Director? He has none, I guess. CRA Attorney?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from her. Again, she didn't comment regarding my fine skills there.
Don't break your back, you can break your arm. Pat.
CRA Board? Coleman. Nothing. The Mayor Pro Tem has nothing. Any comments from the citizens?
There's only one.
And he doesn't look really. Therefore, meeting is adjourned.
Lisa, Miss Harris, talk to the reading. Yeah, we gotta.